Hello boys and girls, Andy Raphael from eTechnics.com, and today we've got something a little bit different. As of late you may have seen some of the videos that we've been doing in terms of Intel Z77 boards that are coming out on the market. We've looked at obviously some from MSI with their GD65 motherboard, and we've also looked at the likes of Gigabyte with their UD3H, and then today we actually recorded one video for a BioStar TZ77 XE4 motherboard. But today, again, we're doing yet another video. We're really sort of cramming through these new boards that are going to be coming out to give you previews of what sort of technology is going to be involved and what's actually going to be on these boards. Now today we've actually got something slightly different. It's not Z77, but it is sort of very, very close to what Z77 has to offer. It's actually a B75 motherboard. For those who aren't aware, there are going to be a few motherboards coming out from Intel, not just Z77 chipsets, but we are going to see H77, Q77, and many other chipsets as well. And one of them is going to be B75. And what B75 is, it's slightly different to Z77. Obviously, Z77 is aimed at the sort of home consumer, gamer, enthusiast, extremist, that kind of thing. Whereas B75 is going to be aimed more at businesses. So we've got small businesses, medium, large, enterprise, government, education, a very, very big sector of the market that probably a lot of people don't realise is actually there. And it's not all about sort of the home consumer and things like that. So what we've actually got from Gigabyte is a B75M D3H. Before we actually sort of delve into the board and show you obviously the package that comes included and what the board is all about, just want to really mention about B75. Now, like I said, B75 is aimed at sort of the home user. So not the home user, it's aimed at completely the opposite, the sort of enterprise, education, small business. It could be home user if you're sort of a Soho user, maybe got your home office, that kind of thing. Then obviously that can be a perfect sort of market share for a B75 motherboard. Now, some of you may be aware of Intel and some of their business-related sort of technologies and things like that, such as vPro. Now, what vPro actually is sort of like a managed system, and what it allows you to do is check things like the PC health status, you know, live updates and things like that, really to keep things fresh, up to date, virus-free, and obviously away from tampering, including things like USB blocker. Now, this doesn't support vPro, but it does support sort of a cut-down kind of version, which is called Intel Small Business Advantage. Now, what this actually essentially is a software application set of utilities which allows you to do things like PC health status, updates, USB blocker, where you can actually, I think this is a marvellous feature, you could have two exactly the same flash drives, USB flash drives for instance, or external hard drives, whatever. They could be exactly the same, look exactly the same. They could have the same serial number barring one digit. And what it will do is you can approve one of those drives so that you know your particular drive. You can go on, you can load it, no problem at all. Someone else who has the other drive, which is very, very similar, maybe even just one digit different in the serial number, and it won't recognise it, won't allow you to load it or anything or access anything on there, which obviously creates a little bit of security when it comes to viruses and things like that. People won't just be able to plug in their USB flash drives and load viruses and things like that on there, and it just gives you that extra sense of security. There are a lot of other features, and we will be doing a couple of articles on eTechnics.com where we will mention some of the features of all the chipsets, Z77, H77, B75 and so forth, and we've got a lot of pictures, slideshows and things like that that we can show to you. But today it's more about the aesthetics of this board and what's actually on offer. Now, when we spoke to Gigabyte, they weren't actually sure that we wanted to look at something like this, and I sort of turned around and said, you know, are you crazy? Of course we do. Purely because of the market that we're trying to sort of get into at eTechnics as journalists. Now, we always focus on the enthusiasts, the overclockers and the gamers. We'll always have, you know, the latest Sapphire graphics cards, the GTX 680 which has just come out, and we'll always have, you know, all the latest gaming and enthusiast motherboards. But if you haven't realised lately, we have had things like NAS boxes from Thecus, from QNAP, and we are testing dual Xeons and things like that at the moment. So we are sort of delving into that sort of office environment based market, and that's exactly where the B75 chipset falls into. So I turned around to Gigabyte and I said, you know, we're doing all this stuff with QNAP, Thecus, EVGA, Asus and people like that. let's do something on the B75. So here we are, they sent this over today. So we've got the B75M D3H. So as normal, what we're going to do is we're going to stop the camcorder filming, bring you in a little bit closer, show you the packaging and what's actually on offer with the B75M D3H in terms of the packaging and the accessories, and then we'll take a quick tour on the board, and you guys can see what you think of it. And obviously, as always, you can rate, subscribe, and also comment on this video. And also in the description there will be a link to the written version of this preview as well. Now, as much as I'd like to show you figures, I can't do so. I am bound by NDA under Intel, but we can give you a look at the sort of features of what Gigabyte have implemented into this for the new sort of chipset coming out. So I can do that, that's no problem at all. I can show you an aesthetics look at this particular board, but that's about as far as it can go until the NDA lifts. As soon as it lifts, be sure to check out etechnix.com, where we will have full figures and facts and everything on this board, as well as all the other boards revolving around the different chipsets, B75, H77, Z77 and so forth. So for now, let's bring you a little bit closer and we'll be looking at the Gigabyte B75M D3H motherboard. So guys, here I am again behind the camcorder. The cameraman isn't here, so I'm having to do everything myself, so that could be quite tricky, as always, trying to open a box one-handed, so I'll warn you on that to start with. Firstly, you're going to see that the box is quite small, so straight away that tells us that it's going to be a micro ATX or smaller motherboard. I can tell you now it is micro ATX, and it's the Gigabyte B75M D3H motherboard. It's based on the B75 chipset, which I can't really talk in too much detail about, but you will see that nearer the time of the NDA lifting and the launch, exactly what B75 and the other chipsets are all about. Now, the main thing that's going to stand out on this box is the Ultra Durable 4 Classic. Now, this is perfect for all types of users, especially business users and people from all over the world. And what this is it's all about Gigabyte's sort of, you know, making their components as durable as possible. And that starts with things like humidity protection. Now, in the UK, that's not a massive problem because humidity protection we don't really need. We're not that much of a humid country. Places like you know, sort of Taiwan and places like that, where this board is actually made, is going to need something like that, because humidity means, you know, moisture, wetness, and you don't want electrical components and sort of, you know, moisture or water mixing, because it doesn't mix well. You also get electric static protection, power failure protection, and high temperature protection. All things that you're going to need in a sort of business environment where something like this board may be powered on 24/7. It supports Intel's Small Business Advantage, which I did touch on sort of briefly. I won't delve too much into that because we'll wait sort of nearer the time where we will mention stuff about the B75 chipset and these little features that it has similar to vPro. Moving in further, we can see that we've got support for Intel processors on the Intel B75 chipset. It does run on socket LGA 1155, and keeping with the ultra durable thing, we can see that we've got a new glass fabric PCB. Now, that's not going to mean a great deal to most people, but to people who really sort of, you know, want to know these sort of things, it's just a better technology, basically. Moving over here, we've got a dual UEFI BIOS, or UEFI BIOS, designed for PCI Express Gen 3. 3 times USB power, USB 3.0 technology, and SATA 3 as well. So some really good features on here. Now, if we turn things over, as always, we get a little bit more detail on things. So once again, Small Business Advantage, which includes, you know, security such as software monitor, data backup and restore, USB blocker 2, PC Health Center, Energy Saver, and Intel Wireless Display. So some really sort of great key features here. We also get a first view of the board. And as you can see, it sort of follows the mainstream sort of budget style and design with the blue PCB and blue and white slots. And we get the full specifications on here as well. 2nd and 3rd gen Intel Core processors, so that obviously includes Ivy Bridge and Sandy Bridge. And it just gives you a view of what we've actually got on offer. Moving over here, back to the sort of ultra durable 4, and we just get a little bit of information on the humidity protection, electrostatic protection, power failure protection, and then of course the high temperature protection as well. And then all of the features down here again: on-off charge, HDMI, DirectX 11, Crossfire support, and so forth. So let's get straight into this and have a look at what's on offer in terms of the accessory package. So straight away we get 2 SATA cables, and one of them is right angled. We get, obviously being a sort of mainstreamy type board, and we've got just a plain silver rear I/O panel. User's manual, and inside there, yeah, there we go. So user's manual, and inside is a driver utility CD or DVD. And for other countries, we have the multilingual installation guidebook. And that is pretty much it. So nice and simple package, and then what we've got here is the motherboard itself in an anti-static bag. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this out of the bag and have a look at the board in all its glory. So guys, this is a look at the B75M D3H motherboard from Gigabyte. As you can see, it does conform to micro ATX standards, and it has got that sort of blue and white styling on the PCB and the relevant different ports on there, which is normally reserved for sort of the mainstream kind of budget feel of motherboards that Gigabyte do. Now, starting off on the CPU socket, the first thing you're going to notice is that there's no heatsinks around it, and this isn't the sort of board that you're going to be overclocking and things like that. It's purely going to be aimed at enterprises, sort of bundled in with a system from the likes of people like Scan and other retailers in the UK and all across the world, where you're just purely going to stick a processor in, sufficient amount of memory, maybe a discrete graphics card, or you could use the onboard through the various ports that are on the rear I/O, and off you go. So no sort of heavy duty passive or active heatsink design, and we can see that the phases and everything around the CPU socket is pretty much very low profile and laid bare. Meaning that there is a lot of room around the CPU socket for ventilation, but generally you'd probably be using like a stock cooler, but you can always put a larger cooler on if you so wish. Power wise, we've got a 4-pin ATX power connector at the top, and then obviously the 24-pin over here. Whilst we're over here looking at the memory support, actually going back to the CPU, like I said earlier, this will support Sandy Bridge 2nd generation and Ivy Bridge 3rd generation Intel processors. Now, moving over to the memory support, we've got 4 DIMM slots, obviously running in dual channel mode. This will support up to 32 gig of memory, 1066, 1333 and 1600, and also obviously supports Intel XMP. Now, we can't really tell you much about the up and coming Ivy Bridge processors, but there's something to look forward to in terms of memory support. Whilst we're over this way, it is worth noticing that we have got a USB 3.0 native port over here, and all the other front panel connectors and everything are all down here as well, which we'll go through. Storage wise, this is something that's quite interesting because there are 6 ports, 4 blue and 2 white, and generally you'd expect all 4 of the blue ones to be the same sort of speed, run by everything the same controller, and then the 2 white ones, but it's actually slightly different. Now, the 4 blue ones and the top white one are all SATA 2, so they all run at 3 gig per second, and they all run from the Intel B75 chipset. Now the bottom port here, the bottom white one, is actually SATA 3, so 6 gig per second. So there's only one on there, but generally if you're using this in enterprise or a similar sort of education or small business, things like that, you're only really going to have one drive installed, and then it's all going to be connected via to a server. In terms of cooling, we have got one little low profile tiny little cooler over here, which sits over the B75 chipset. Now, front panel connectors, if we just swing this around a little bit, we've got all of our normal front panel connectors here, USB 2.0, TPM connector, LPT, COM, SPDIF and front audio. Nice and simple. In terms of PCI expansion bays, we have got a X16 slot up here, which does run at X8 speeds. We've got a PCI, legacy PCI slot here, and then another one just below it. And then we have another X16 slot, which runs at X4 speeds. It's not the sort of thing that you are going to use multiple graphics for. It's not that sort of board, and it's not the market it's aimed at, but as noted here, you have got ATI, even though it's AMD, you have got CrossfireX technology. So you could put your primary graphics in up here and your secondary graphics down here and connect it up via a Crossfire bridge, which doesn't come included, it's worth noting. Other than that, as you can see, the board is quite simple. The last thing really is to show you the rear I/O. So moving down here, we can see that we have 2 USB 2.0 ports, a PS2 mouse keyboard combo port, VGA, single link DVI, HDMI, 2 USB 3.0 ports, another 2 USB 2.0 ports, a gigabit LAN port which is courtesy of Realtek, and then obviously our audio ports as well, and the audio is the Realtek ALC 887 codec for 7.1 channel sound. Other than that, that is pretty much the board in all its glory. Like I say, I would be able to, if it wasn't for NDA, show you some figures and facts and performance and things like that, but sadly I'm restricted. So that is pretty much all we can show you for now, aesthetically wise. And then when it comes to the NDA lifting, we can show you the sort of full review on exactly what this board can do in terms of performance. So for now, Andy Rafael from eTechnics.com, looking at the Gigabyte B75M D3H.